Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Chaitanya Desai, Managing Director, and Mr. V.C. Divakar, CFO, APAR Industries. I would now like to hand over the call to Mr. Kushal Desai for his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Q4 FY21 earnings call of APAR Industries. I would like to actually make a small tribute to our team, who we fondly call the APAR Parivar, who really left no stone unturned to ensure that all our plants kept running through the pandemic, through both the first and the second waves, and have serviced our customers well. We have continued to maintain very high fill rates through this period and have maintained very safe work practices throughout this whole period. So I cannot express how proud I am today to be a member of this Parivar and the way all the members have cooperated to run the businesses and the offices. So despite both the COVID-19 waves coming and hitting operations, we managed to grow our adjusted profit after tax by 27% year on year to 171 crores, and the return on equity for FY21 was up by 106 basis points to 12.5%. This was also helped by a 42% reduction in the finance costs. Consolidated revenue for FY21 came in at 6,405 crores. The early part of the year, commodity prices were very low. In the second part of the year, they grew substantially. So this is around 14% lower than the previous period, mainly due to a 23% year-on-year decline in the domestic revenue side. The export revenues actually grew in the year by 3% to reach 2,637 crores. The EBITDA came in at 422 crores, and the EBITDA margin improved by 31 basis points to 6.6%. Our oil business recorded growing revenues and the highest ever EBITDA per KL post forex adjustments, which for the year came in at 7,032 rupees per KL, partly aided by premiumization of our product mix, as also with respect to favorable raw material prices. And then, of course, a very strict focus on working capital management, which helped restrict the number of outstanding days and in turn has had a positive impact on the interest that we've paid. Our conductor business unfortunately faced unprecedented headwinds, especially towards the end of the year. And this arose from a very steep rise in commodity prices, especially steel, which is something that we cannot hedge. And also hit by a very sharp escalation in international shipping freight rates. In addition to this, for the HTLS projects business, there were several small lockdowns which happened, but more than that, the required outages were not possible to be obtained due to various COVID-related reasons, resulting in idle time and the execution not happening as per the plan. In Q4 FY21, specifically looking at that quarter, APAR posted consolidated revenues of 1,907 crores, which is up 6% year on year. Here, the domestic business has grown by 12% during the fourth quarter. The EBITDA came in at 106 crores, which is 3% higher than the same period previous year. The EBITDA per KL for our oil business for that quarter actually crossed 10,000 rupees per KL. Finance costs were down to 21 crores from 50 crores in the same period last year. And our profit after tax grew to 48 crores, which is 104% above the same period previous year. I'd also like to just touch upon a few industry highlights. There are a new set of draft guidelines that have been issued of approximately 3 lakh crores reform-based result-linked scheme for DISCOMs. It targets the reduction of the ATC losses to between 12 to 15% by FY25. It also lays out a smart prepaid metering system and a reduction in ACS and ANR losses to zero by FY25. So the capital outlay for metering and infrastructure is stated to be about 1.5 lakh crores each. So 1.5 lakh for the metering infrastructure and 1.5 lakh for the transmission and distribution infrastructure over a period of 5 years. The outstanding dues of the DISCOMs has actually reduced by 3% and is at 78,379 crores as of 31st March. About 16,750 circuit kilometers of new transmission lines were added in FY21, which is up 44% from FY20. The addition was 6% higher than planned. However, most of the ordering pertaining to the transmission lines which came especially towards the end of the year have not taken place due to high commodity prices. The key T&D players reported an order inflow of about 15,800 crores in the fourth quarter. 4 LOIs have been issued in the FY21 for new tariff-based competitive bidding projects. Power Grid has also approved investments of around 2,200 crores, which is actually quite small relative to the peak investments that they had. But this investment has been announced by them. And if you look at Q4 FY21, about 7.8 gigawatts of solar tenders were auctioned, which is up 163% over Q3 FY21, but down 32% over the same period previous year. And however, the actual completion of solar projects was much lower, and it was 15% lower than what was achieved in FY20. I'd just like to now focus on specifically the segmental highlights of the 3 segments in the company. So in FY21, the conductor division revenue came in at 2,908 crores, which is down 19% year on year. The domestic revenues were down 37%, largely due to COVID-19 related issues, especially in the early part of the year, followed by delayed tendering and persistent low demand. The price situation also was was not favorable. So the focus actually moved to export revenues. So export revenues were 0.4% up year on year, but contributed to 52% of the total revenue. And this compared to 41% in FY20. So it's about an 11% increase as a percentage. The EBITDA per metric ton post Forex adjustment came in at 7,926 rupees per metric ton, which is 26% lower than year-on-year period. The share of the premium products was 13%, which includes the high efficiency conductors and 14% for copper conductors for the railways. The other 2 new segments which we had introduced in FY19 and FY20, which is OPGW and the copper transpose conductors, grew by 83% and 286% on a year-on-year basis. But of course, one does need to keep in mind that the base number was relatively low. We expect substantial growth in both of these product lines as we move into FY22. The new order intake for the year came in at 2,425 crores. The order book as it stands on 31st March 2021 stood at 1,649 crores with the export share at 55%. Having said that, substantial orders have come in the first quarter, in the early days of Q1 FY22, which are amounting to over 500 crores. The fourth quarter, the conductor revenue clocked 837 crores. The HEC reconducting work was impacted due to the lack of shutdowns, as continuous power was not had to be given to various hospitals and other important COVID response related, including oxygen plants, etc. One of the highlights of the quarter is that we executed a 220 circuit kilometers gap conductor line for PGCIL, which is the first line of this size that has been executed by an Indian company. So this added another milestone in our journey. However, the EBITDA per metric ton post forex adjustments fell by 97% in this quarter. And there were a few very unfavorable and significant factors that affected this. The first was the steep increase that took place in the international freight costs, which the company was not able to pass on because it was part of a CFR or a DDP contract. The second is actually aluminum premium that also substantially increased, and again was a fallout of the same factor, which is the international freight. So one of them is on the outgoing product, the other one is on the incoming material. The third is steel prices, which as all of you know, steel prices have been at record highs. And there is no hedgeable mechanism, unfortunately, for steel. And then lastly, the availability of containers also were difficult to come by, as well as at the end of the year, inspections got delayed due to the lack of travel, since the second wave of COVID had already started taking effect. The export orders, which were actually profitable when received, turned to be quite loss-making due to these unhedgeable impacts that I mentioned above. There were also delay in customers' clearances to inspect and dispatch goods, as I mentioned, due to travel restrictions. And finally, the MEIS benefit, which was an export-related incentive scheme that the Government of India had, that resulted in a 2% benefit on the FOB value of exports, was withdrawn by the government in Q3. And unfortunately, the alternate scheme has not come in to replace the MEIS. So at the moment, the exports are happening without any incentives, and this is equal to about 2% of the FOB value of the goods. The new order inflow for the quarter came in at 256 crores, but as I mentioned in the first few days of April, we received orders worth about 500 plus crores. EPC players have also delayed ordering due to the steep increase in the aluminum and steel prices. So even though TBCB orders etc. have been awarded, but the downstream ordering is still something which has been withheld at this stage, I guess, looking for more favorable price points. If I come to the specialty oil division, the situation was a little different. It happened to be actually the best performing year that the oil division has had in its history. Revenue was up 2% year on year in FY21. And this was driven by an 11% year-on-year growth in the overseas business that was spread across various sub-verticals that we have. The overseas business contributed 41% compared to 37% of the previous year. Our plant in Hamria had a utilization of 79% compared to 69% in FY20. The white oil business sales volume was up 16%. Driven largely by growth in exports. The lubricants business, which comprises of our automotive oils and industrial oils, also grew by 15% year on year. In Q4, the specialty oil division recorded a 33% growth to 719 crores as we gained market share as well as a share of business from major customers. The domestic revenue was up 43%, and the export revenue was up 18% during the fourth quarter. The EBITDA post forex adjustment came in at 104 crores, which was fourfold up compared to the same period previous year. Of course, we need to keep in mind that the previous year we were impacted because the end of the year was truncated, where a lot of industrial and automotive sales were restricted. If you look at the cable business, The cable business had an overall reasonably difficult year, pretty much from the beginning due to the impact of COVID-19. The revenue for the year came in at 1,270 crores, which was 21% lower than the same period previous year. Power cables continue to be highly competitive, but the elastomeric E-beam business, which really covers the solar, wind, railways and defense side of the business, were all affected due to COVID-related issues. These segments are also the most profitable segments for the company's business, so thereby impacting both the top line and the bottom line. The optical fiber division, though, had revenues that grew by 21% year on year. During this period, we've installed the third E-beam machine, which is of 2.5 MeV class, and our expectation is that in FY22, as we continue to focus on growing the export business and some of our premium products, which are medium voltage covered conductors, introduction of automotive cables and harnesses, and increased sales, which we are already starting to see from our solar, wind, railways and defense customers, starting up from June, July of this year onwards, we expect this year to be a much better year. We have further increased our export thrust in the business, and during the last 1 year, we've received various UL approvals, which are mandatory for the sale of electrical cables to the US market. And we've received global supply approvals from some of the largest windmill producers in the world, including General Electric and Vestas, who are the two largest. There is a significant capex plan which we have just approved in the board meeting of yesterday to substantially increase cables that would go into the wind and solar segments, as well as target the US market. The capex for the cable business planned is at approximately 95 crores, which we plan to spend over the next 12 to 18 months. We see a window of opportunity has clearly opened up, and the China Plus One strategy actually presents the company with a fairly strong opportunity. Coming to the fourth quarter, Q4 for the cable division, the revenues came in at 443 crores, which is 7% higher than the same period previous year. The EBITDA post Forex was at 14 crores, and the EBITDA margin came in at 3.2%. We expect, as I mentioned, a much better FY22 in the cables vertical, with already reasonably strong traction of order inflows that have started coming in. So to conclude, for us, FY22 has been a challenging, FY21 has been a challenging year. FY22 has started off a little bit difficult because of the second wave, but as I mentioned, as we progress through the year, we expect things to improve substantially. We would like to continue to broaden our focus on the export markets. Our portfolio of products are increasingly being targeted to be focused around safety first, more environmentally friendly products and more energy efficient products, as the ESG theme dominates infrastructure investments. We are also actually awaiting the details of the mega investment pushed by the Biden government in the United States, and we are very well placed to actually service this opportunity as it unfolds. So with this, I would like to come to the end of my comments. I thank you all for joining the call. Wish you the best of health. We could please open up the floor to questions, if any.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to withdraw your question from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. This is a reminder to the participants. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one now. The first question is from the line of Nimish Shah from MK Investment Managers. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So I had a few questions. So just firstly on this delisting of our copper wire by railways, so just wanted to understand how much of an impact that we have on our top line. And is that in the conductor segment or it's in the cables business?
So the copper conductor is in the conductor business, and in terms of the top line, it may impact, worst case scenario to the tune of about 400 crores.
Okay.
And it is something that the company has, already appealed against, because it was more of a procedural, issue which has been brought up, which is disputed. So we are reasonably confident that we would actually be able to mitigate some of that, hit.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
And and one more thing. So just wanted to understand if you could give us some breakup in terms of our cables business. So how much of say solar or wind would be contributing towards our revenues, and say how much will be telecom, railways and defense? Some ballpark numbers will be helpful.
Hello. Telecom.
Yes.
1 minute. Telecom is around 13% actually. Solar is closer to 18%, and wind is at present wind is only 3 to 4%.
Okay, and the balance will be, sir?
So balance utility is there, EPC contractors, EPC is there,
Okay.
defense is there, shipping is there, lot of things are there.
Okay, understood.
Even the railway segment is...
Railway is also substantial.
Railways for the cables are comprising of two parts. One is supply of cables to the railways, and the second is supply of harness to the railway, which is wired up cables on a frame that deliver directly to the railways, and these are used both in largely in passenger compartments, and we've also got qualified to supply to the locomotive side for harnesses.
Sure. And like you mentioned that you will be focusing on automotive wires and harnesses. So is that a new product that we have introduced, or?
We already had that, even in previous earnings calls, I had brought it up that we are focusing on supplying electron beam cured cables into the automotive segment. So one segment where it's already started is in all the electric vehicles. So we have been supplying JBM Auto, who are supplying these buses to the various government bodies. In fact, they have a reasonable amount of orders for that. So the wiring of all of JBM buses is coming through us. Also, there are some of the scooter companies who we've supplied that. As well as we've got our products ARAI approved for supply to the mainstream, trucks and passenger car companies. So we are working with the auto companies and the harness manufacturers to supply automotive cables into the wiring of the vehicles itself, besides the EVs. The EVs is something that, we've already advanced quite a bit.
Sure. And just one more thing. So the capex plan in the cables division. So are we planning to? So this is largely incremental. So are we planning to add capacities in the current plan, or?
Yes. So it's all coming up in our plant, which is in the Khatalwad plant, and the focus is all on as we've got these global approvals for the wind side, as Mr. Devadkar mentioned earlier. Currently, the Indian demand has been a little bit muted FY22 there is expected to be a lot more demand on the wind side, because today the projects are being bid on an integrated basis, which is a composition of solar and wind. But overseas, the wind capacity increase is likely to be in most of the Western countries significantly higher than solar, given the nature of the sunshine that they get through the year. So this capacity will actually go into being able to supply windmills both onshore and offshore, as well as augmenting capacity for solar cables, as well as a lot of the E-beam cables get supplied into the United States market also. So as this whole infrastructure program in the US is opening up, we don't know the exact details of it, but it looks like the demand will substantially increase. So we want to make sure that all the investment goes in as early as possible, so that as that program gets rolled out, we are in a position to participate in it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll join back in with you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Himanshu Upadhyay from PGIM Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. I have a question on the conductors side. We have stated that there has been a significant inflation in almost all the segments, means aluminum pricing and logistic costs, and and we still have an existing order book of 1,600 crores, okay? So what is the outlook on the margins, means, or can we raise the prices and incremental orders what we are tendering? Are we seeing that we are able to increase the prices for the tender because of the inflation being so high across the board, what we have stated?
So, the order book actually consists of orders which were tendered and filled in fundamentally prior to the previous year, that is in 2020. They carried at that point in time, freight rates, steel prices, etc., which existed then. Subsequently, as new tenders are being filed in, obviously all of these get corrected upward as we bid on it. Where the problem lies is that most of these are on a fixed price basis to EPC contractors, and international freight steel prices are not hedgeable as things stand today.
So would it be right to say that the new orders, what we have got of 256 crores, would be at a better margin, and where we would be back to normalized numbers?
So there will be a more significant impact in the first half of the year, because that's where the vintage of the orders which are being executed are older, which are impacted by this, unless there is a debottlenecking of freight, which is expected to happen as all these economies open up. But the newer orders which are there obviously have all these components factored into it. So, once you're locked in, you don't have an ability to change. But whenever you quote for a new tender, obviously each of these parameters is then is corrected.
Okay. And on the specialty oil and lubricant, in lubricant, what would be our breakup between industrial and auto side?
So we combine the two together, and the volumes are a little over. Mr. Diwakar can give the exact number, but it's a little over 60,000 kiloliters. I mean 60 million liters a year.
66,000 kiloliters.
And are we seeing traction on, because of what we are hearing more on the manufacturing side, traction is happening? So do you think lubricants should continue to do well both on industrial and automotive? And are the margins sustainable in the market? Because what we hear, some of the players have not raised prices for the automotive side. So what is the outlook here, or what you are seeing in market?
So on the automotive, so let me just split it into two parts, the automotive side and the industrial side. So on the automotive side, actually, we have a relatively strong position and a focus on the agriculture side of the automotive. So fundamentally, product sales to tractor manufacturers, harvesters, combines, etc. So our bigger clients would be ITL, that's Sonalika Tractors, Escorts, Eicher. So these are the main OEMs that we service. So we don't see actually the demand from whatever the projections that are coming from the agriculture side is they're expecting a stronger 21 compared to 20. Obviously the first quarter has been affected, but just yesterday most of the states have started opening up the agri side, starting up from 1st of June. So I think that side is quite secure and will continue to grow as some amount of mechanization and things improve in India. On the industrial side, I would imagine that industrial sales will continue to increase. As you know, a lot of expansions are happening, capex expansions taking place. So both first fill as well as lubrication requirements on the industrial side will grow. And if you look specifically at the industrial oil segment, after the oil PSUs and Castrol, we are one of the larger industrial oil players in the country. Many others like Gulf Oil and the MNCs are more automotive focused. It's only Shell and Mobil amongst the MNCs who focus on industrial.
Okay. I'll join back in the queue for further queries. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Saurabh Patwa from HDFC. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir, and thanks for taking the question. I have a few questions. One is regarding this cable business capex. Could you just throw some more light on the details of it, as in what would be the revenue capability of the 95 crores capex which we are doing? What kind of ROCs we are expecting? As in we are doing capex in businesses where we won't have any operating leverage because current revenue is very small. So and we'll be targeting US market. So something on that side. Second, how long you believe this current margin in oil business are sustainable? And how much of this you would attribute to this rising spread to the inventory, with the low cost inventory in case you had, or is it because you're getting more share from unorganized players who may not be getting able to procure the waste oil in current scenario?
Okay, so let me answer the two questions separately. As far as the capex is concerned on the cable side, there are two major projects which are there. So and by the way, the fundamental infrastructure is fungible to produce various types of products. So there are new lines going in to produce these elastomeric cables that go into wind. They can also be used in solar installations, but they're more tuned to producing the larger cables that go into wind installations. We see actually a pretty rapid ramp up, because the key milestone is actually to go ahead and get approved. We have already started supplies from existing infrastructure that we have, but the capacity will end up many-fold increasing once these two new lines are put in place for servicing windmills. The paybacks on all these projects are in the 4-year kind of time frame. As far as the E-beam capacity that goes in, that can be used of course across all E-beam, various types of E-beam products. But the size of the machine has been selected such that a lot of the sizes that are expected to pick up in volume in the US markets pick up. We are already started exporting to the US markets in this year. So all this infrastructure coming in is going to augment capacity to service customers who would have already started in FY22.
Right.
Some of the business has already come in the fourth quarter of FY21 also.
Okay. Just something more on this same thing. So how long it would have taken for us to become L1 in many of these customers?
It's not really an L1 situation here because this is all negotiated. It goes into
You need to have some technical
customers
approval,
are people like General Electric, Vestas, Siemens Gamesa, Nordex, these type of companies. So it's all a negotiated deal. We were
in terms of technical
supplying them in
capabilities,
the domestic market in India. But for us to be able to service the global market, it had to undergo certain time frame of supply in India and then additional testing and requirements which would go into those overseas markets. So both of those have been completed.
And who would be our competitors in these businesses overseas?
So our competitors in this are companies like Nexen, Prysmian, and they're all overseas players, LS Cable, etc. There's nobody we have almost 70% market share in the domestic market at the moment. It's just that market has been relatively small at this stage, but as you know, the wind segment in India also is growing.
Yeah.
So coming to the second question, which is the sustainability on in the oil business. So there has obviously been a tailwind in terms of inventory. As the market prices have been continuously rising, the raw material prices. So there has been some benefit from the inventory side of things. But, as you see, the finished lubricant business has also grown substantially. So both the automotive and industrial businesses of ours have grown, through this year in spite of all the pandemic-related issues. Our share of business with all the three tractor companies has increased. And the commitments which we have as we get into FY22 is higher than what we have in terms of share of business compared to FY21. Also, our industrial business, I think, will grow primarily with new capex coming in, and a lot of it has to be driven by capex that goes into manufacturing infrastructure. And from whatever I've heard from our product managers and sales teams, is that for the first time we are seeing brownfield and greenfield expansions happening, in terms of the manufacturing infrastructure. So a lot of first fill requirements being floated. Etc. So I think the lubricant side, the finished lubricant side is quite sustainable. In terms of our overseas operations, the Hamriyah plant actually has received a lot of more approvals through this pandemic period as people have tried to balance the geographic risk. And now with the second wave, in India, you will see that the first quarter of FY22, the volumes out of our Hamriyah plant have even gone up further, because many companies are insisting that the split should take place between two locations and two countries. Given the fact that a lot of container freight ships are also missing India because of this, the second wave that we've faced.
Right, sir.
So I think these are structural changes. They're not going to be something that will disappear, overnight. We've also increased our presence as far as transformer oils is concerned in some of the markets like Australia, Turkey, etc., where the demand for transformers that go into the ESG projects has started again increasing. So we see that the domestic side of transformer oil has gone down substantially because of the lack of funding to the utilities, but the overseas side of transformer oil is still doing well.
Right, sir. So from a medium-term point of view, maybe not be 22, but so historically, our last 10 years average may be close to like 4,500 with peak of around 6,000 and maybe bottom of around like 2,500 types. But how, as you mentioned that this is sort of a structural change. So going forward, what is the range of EBITDA per KL which you would which you believe is more sustainable?
So, between 5,000 rupees a KL is something that, has been historically a sustainable number, especially in the absence of a lot of violent movements on the foreign exchange side. So when the FX environment is stable, 5,000 rupees a KL is not something that's out of place. So this year, if you see, the numbers were closer to 7,300.
Yes.
But our operating plan for next year is in the 5,000 odd range.
Correct. So that would be a substantial discount to what we reported in last 2 quarters.
Yes, so actually some of it was a bounce back. If you go through some of the previous earnings calls, we had issues where you had some of the customers defer their deliveries. So you used, expensive raw material to service new orders which you got, at the current lower prices in Q2 particularly. And those deferred orders which executed in Q3 were then at relatively high prices but with cheaper raw materials. So I would really look at, the full period.
Right.
And so that, is a number which is a 7,300 rupees per KL number. And whatever we work should then be, benchmarked against that. So about 5,000 odd rupees a KL is something that's very sustainable.
Understood, sir. And this last one question which we just chip in. Is how long you believe, of course you mentioned in the previous answer itself that by second half you believe the current order should come. But when you say that, sir, does that mean that the profitability will be sharply higher, assuming things remain here or come down? As you said, like the freight rates are going to come down and the current...
Just to give you a perspective, these export orders which we've executed in Q4 of last year and which will come in the next few months of this year, they were all profitable when the orders were taken. Nobody expected freight rates to the US, to increase 3x. And, to some of these markets which is 3 times, 4 times. So the impact per ton of that itself is 8,000 to 10,000 rupees a ton, in some locations. Also, one of the things you're not able to hedge is the premium on aluminum, and the premium on aluminum is also increased fundamentally because of the same ocean freight, because that's what the premium captures. So it's really both for incoming and outgoing material, the same parameter that's actually hitting that. Just as we think that margins on our oil business are not sustainable and they will correct downward, I don't think these freight rates are sustainable either.
So the
they will also back down, may not go to the levels which existed pre-COVID, but when you had containers going on a route which was $1,000 per container, and today you're paying $6,000 a container, it's certainly not a sustainable type of equation.
Absolutely. So my question was slightly different actually. So I just wanted to understand, so when we are bidding for a new project now, or when we are taking orders for a new conductor project now, so we are taking the normalized freight levels or normalized spreads, or we are taking the current spread and current freight levels?
So we are taking the current levels at the moment.
Okay.
And
so
also
increasing, the profitability will increase sharply? Is that...
So it's on the current, because if it's a DDV contract, you would take the current rate. There's also a freight Baltic index, which, is something that is declared, which we are now talking to various customers and utilities globally, to see what is the level of acceptance they have of that. Because it's not only a conductor manufacturer, but if you see all the EPC guys, everybody is now trying to figure out what to do, because never in the history before was there such a delta on freight.
Correct.
So it's a completely new problem that has arisen. There has been an impact also in terms of steel, but the steel comes and impacts only largely your conventional type of conductors. The ACCC and AL59 and these sort of conductors have a lower or no element of steel in them. So as the sophistication of the conductors and premiumization increases, the steel component will keep going down. And the last thing is that in this year we expect a much higher order book on the HTLS and the premium high efficiency conductors, and actually some of that has already started coming in. And finally, we were expecting more orders to come in OPGW wires, but those tenders had to be re-tendered in the past because it entailed a number of Chinese players who were participating previously in those tenders, and today they're debarred from quoting. So those tenders have been refloated, and they would have got finalized, but because of these last few months COVID-related matters, so our expectation is that it should happen in the next few months, with deliveries commencing in this financial year itself.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks, sir. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sanjay Pandit from 1729 Capital. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My question is, by when does the company overall expect to achieve, say, 18 to 20% return on equity, which is a target you guys had sort of talked about a while ago? And related to that, what kind of sort of return on capital threshold, sort of long-term return on capital threshold do you have when making new capital expenditures, overall by division?
So typically we would look at, it depends on how strategic the investment is. But paybacks which are in the range of 4 years is what one would typically look at if you're setting up something which is a significant brownfield expansion, and if it's just expansion in existing product lines, then you're looking at something which is sub 3 years in terms of a return on the capex. In this particular case, we've actually brought forward and we've also bunched the capex together, because we physically see that there is a maybe an opportunity of a lifetime that's going to come up in this area. The US market has never really been that accessible to Indian cable companies because of differential tariffs that India has faced, especially relative to China. There was a 5% difference, 5 to 7.5% difference in tariff. And also the infrastructure spending in the US has been talked about for many, many years. But the sense is now that it's really time for them to press the button. And the seriousness with which, the discussions are going on, there will be a big increase in the electrical infrastructure. In addition to this, the whole electric vehicle movement, which even though it may be relatively slow in India, is starting to pick up in these markets, overseas markets. So all of that put together is what has accelerated us, putting the capex in place. Our depreciation itself is about 90 crores a year. So the cash generation that comes, from the depreciation itself can be used to fund this. And we have already taken a line of credit, an ECB. So together, I think, it makes sense for us to actually press the button sooner than later. The groundwork for this has already been done, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of both cables that go into windmills as well as just general electrical cables going into the US market. In terms of our clear plan is to get to target is to get to a 20% return on equity, and our sense is that in FY22 itself we will make a progress towards that. Not getting to 20%, but moving up in terms of, because the cable business is clearly going to do a lot better than in FY21, and in the second half we expect the conductor business also to come back into more normalized working. So difficult to give you an exact time frame, but I think we are clearly moving in that direction.
So then perhaps sometime in FY23 you can have a run rate ROE of maybe 18 to 20%.
That would clearly be an aspirational, it would clearly be a target, and it is quite feasible. Because, we don't expect a very long gestation period to load the equipments that come in, in this cable capex that we are talking about. Both the oil business and the conductor business have limited capex that is going in. And in fact, the plan was to just sweat the current assets. But in order for us to be able to optimize this opportunity, we need to put, this capex in place. And it can add to a revenue that exceeds, 500 crores by putting in this 95 crore capex.
Yes, no, absolutely. It looks like the capex is an excellent thing to pursue, provided it's attractive returns on capital, which is what appears to be the case. Even Warren Buffett talked about major capex happening in the United States with respect to power transmission, and so that ought to be an opportunity for the whole industry.
So we expect the capex to happen not only on power transmission but also on the distribution side. For example, in Mumbai, I have been informed that new parking that's going into buildings, 20% of it needs to buildings and malls actually. 20% of the parking has to have an electrical charging point for an EV. So with these sort of things coming in, the distribution infrastructure also will increase, not only in India but everywhere around the world.
So based on what you're seeing today, if you were to look out, say, 3 to 5 years, what kind of sort of revenue and operating margins do you think APAR could get to? And what kind of capex would it require to get there?
So, our capex plan, actually, we didn't have a plan to invest, such a large amount of maybe another 95 crores. We've just come through with a reasonably large capex plan over the last 5 years. Our expectation is that, you will see this big jump, on the cable side in the next 2 years. You can easily see the top line growing by, 5 to 700 crores. Some of it coming from this capex and some of it coming from the underutilized capacity that already exists. In the cable business, in the conductor and oil business, the growth will be more tempered. And our oil business will continue to grow at 7-8% a year. The focus continues to remain on premiumizing whatever offering we have. Our conductor business, we really don't want to focus on any top line growth. We are really focused on just improving the product mix. So as you'll see, all the new product lines which have gone in, that's where we expect the growth to come from, a higher value addition. The CTC is now growing. The OPGW will actually kick in this year with a lot of new tenders where it's restricted to pretty much Indian players. And HTLS, which is the premium conductors that we have, this year you will see a very large growth on that conductor side. In addition to that, the services which were involved, which is actually designing the whole line and executing it, the reconductoring business, that has actually been hit very badly last year because of, the COVID-related outages. And with the hope that, some of this falls in place as we get into the second half of this year, that will also start kicking in. There are already tenders which are being finalized, as we speak. And so, in the next few months, we'll probably have a much better order book on these HTLS to report also. So all this premiumization is going on, and that should help increase, finally the return on equity at our end.
Correct. And finally, what kind of weighted average cost of borrowing can you fund this capex at?
Mr. Devakar, do you want to take that question?
We have taken a ECB loan, which is closer to around 3% or so. And if you add maybe today the forward, we don't take forward cover cost actually. Forward cover for a long-term loan actually. But today's forward cover cost is around 5% actually.
I see. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Maulik Patel from Equirus Securities. Please go ahead. Mr. Maulik Patel, your line is in talk mode. Kindly go ahead with your question, please. As there is no reply from the current participant, we move to the next question from the line of Nilesh Jetani from Envision Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So my question is on the conductor business. So what I have observed that there has been a huge swing in the EBITDA per ton we have seen in the conductor business. So what comes to my mind is like the sharp decline in the railways business could be one of the reasons, apart from the sharp rises in commodity and freight prices going up. So I wanted to understand, so what are the price hikes, so probably the new orders which we have, so approximately 55% again is coming from the export side. So what could be the impact on EBITDA per ton going forward? What is the inventory we currently have as far as the low-cost commodity inventory we have? That's the second question. And third would be, can you give some color on what is the difference in the EBITDA per ton we earn in the railways versus the conventional T&D conductor?
So, some of the business, as explained earlier, has been taken earlier when the costs of various, components like the ocean freight, the aluminum premium, the steel, those were at a lower numbers. And now we have those orders which we are executing, and some of it will be, happening during this first couple of quarters in this year. So, it is difficult to predict what the rates of the ocean freight will be ultimately. So depending on what they are, accordingly, there will be some plus or minus going on with regard to those old orders. The second part is with regard to the orders that you've taken in the last quarter and in this quarter. We have been pricing basis the current market of these costs. So again, hopefully, as long as the rates of these steel and other things are remaining in this range, we may not see any much, hit on those fronts. The copper conductor which you mentioned, that had not really hit us in the last quarter. This is more of a phenomena which is going to probably affect us in the future if we are not successful in our legal efforts. So the other point which was mentioned is that new business has come in of the more value-added products like the HEC, as well as we are envisaging some OPGW business coming in. So that will get executed also. So some of the orders, they will, sort of have a weighted average impact on our ultimate results. Some would be coming in at better current prices and some at the old prices. So the whole thing will be like a weighted average impact. Also, I'd like to mention that as far as the copper conductors, there are two parts to it. One is the catenary wires, and the other is the one type of contact wire for which currently we have been not permitted to, get the business unless the appeal comes in our favor. Although we are quoting for it and we are allowed to quote for it. So that situation may sort of slightly improve the profitability going forward if we are successful in our efforts to get this overturned in the railways.
Understood. And so some color on what is the differential in the EBITDA per ton we make when we supply conductors to railways versus the other conventional conductors? Is the differential too high?
We don't give the breakup like that actually, but the conventional conductor is having the lowest EBITDA and the copper conductor is higher than the conventional conductor, and the highest is the HTLS conductor. The highest EBITDA is in HTLS conductor.
In terms of the pecking order, you've got HTLS, OPGW, which are at the top of the pack. Then followed by, the copper transpose conductors which are going into transformer manufacturing. And then of the two conductors to the railways, you have catenary and contact. So catenary is more profitable than contact because contact has got more players in the industry. So to just clarify the current situation, the RDSO took objection to a certain procedural matter, which even though the rights, which is the inspection agency of the railways, had cleared. So we've got an appeal. So we are actually able to participate in every tender that's out there, and none of those tenders can be finalized unless a decision comes finally in this regard. So we are still working our way towards seeing whether they are actually going to have any impact or not on this.
Understood.
Yeah. So, it's not that the business is actually lost already, but it could potentially be lost, the contract via business for a certain period of time if the judgment goes against us. So, past the appellate, then it can go to the High Court. And it's actually nothing to do with the technical supply, it's to do with a procedural matter.
The period is 1 year from 1st April 21.
Yeah.
So what about the EBITDA per ton we aspire to achieve in the conductor segment, say not FY22?
So we've been focused on trying to achieve 12,000 rupees per ton. And that's the target which we would like to achieve based on the mix of these products which we have, and on a sustainable basis.
Understood. And sir, what will be sustainable EBITDA margins for the cables business?
So, the cables business, for the mix of products that we have, we can, sustainable margin would be in the 10% range, 10 to 12% range.
We are already doing 11%. We have done in FY20, FY19 also.
Yeah.
Closer to 10.5.
Even in the cable business, you've also had the same hits also which have come in, and hit, our export portion has gone up, so container freight has increased. We have significant orders from some of the Latin American countries where, freight rate or box rates have increased. So, but unlike in the conductor case, there, when the quarter passes by, we have applied for now revision in the rates. There's also been an increase in the case of cables, a very substantial increase with respect to polymer costs, which don't necessarily get captured in any price variation. And steel, of course, is also a component. But the difference between conductor and cables is that generally the cable supplies and value of a single order is smaller in size. So as a consequence, you can correct your pricing and strategy as you go forward. So that's why the hits are smaller, and we expect actually a faster recovery there, and followed by the recovery happening on the conductor side.
Understood.
I hope that explains the sort of framework.
Yes, sir. Yes. That means thank you so much for answering patiently. If there are any more questions, I will join back in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Mayank Bhandari from Nirmal Bang Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Sir, I just wanted to understand in the conductor side of the business, as the government is focusing more on the localized domestic manufacturing and banning more of the Chinese imports. So from the conductor point of view, aren't we slated to benefit from government's move? I just wanted to understand from industry perspective.
Yes, so the product line which gets the most affected as far as Chinese is concerned, and the most favorable as far as the Indian manufacturers is concerned, is the OPGW wire. And today with the data is the new oil, so every overhead line is actually carrying an OPGW earth wire, so that data transmission happens on the fiber optic link there. So the benefit of this is actually going to come this year, because last year there were a lot of Chinese companies that had participated in the tender, so all of those tenders have got scrapped. The government refloated tenders, but there were some technical issues which were there in the refloated tenders. So the government themselves scrapped those and have now for a second time refloated the tenders. So in the next few months, we would expect OPGW tender finalization. And there are, principally APAR and Sterlite are the two major manufacturers in the country. And even though one of the Chinese companies has a subsidiary in India, given the ownership rule which is there, they can't participate. So, we would expect that a reasonable amount of OPGW business would come by, as it gets finalized in the next few months. The other product lines, there is no Chinese competition, which is, conventional conductors, HTLS, copper conductors for the railways, CTC for, the transformer companies, etc. But OPGW is quite a significant benefit which will come.
So what would be the market size of this OPGW? Your understanding? Hello?
Yeah. Actually, the costs of the raw materials have gone up quite a bit, but the market size in terms of kilometers is to the tune of about 20,000 kilometers per year.
Okay. And sir,
the transmission lines that finally get executed, because it's the earth wire that is used on the line. So, these 4 TB, as the projects keep on getting announced, each one of them carries, some OPGW component.
okay, thanks. And sir, lastly, in your trade payables of about 3,000 crore, what is the level of acceptances now?
I will just give. Just hold on. The LIBOR-related acceptances are 1,034 crores, and the domestic interest rate acceptances are 566 crores. So total is about 1,600 crores.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anuj Sharma from M3 Investment. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. My first question is, we are seeing some traction in the white oil segment, both in India and export. So, what has led to this, and what is the sustainability of this? Any structural change in the white oil business?
So there has been some amount of growth that has happened, because some of the products which we sell actually find their way into wipes and sanitary wipes and things like that. So there has been an increase, that goes into some of those products. Also, some of our white oils, and we are quite specialized in this, it goes into manufacturing food grade adhesives. So it's, used in packaging for food, it's used, in nappy liners, any of the products where, you need a very clean application. So customers for this are people like Henkel, Bostik, H.B. Fuller, Avery Dennison, these type of companies. So I think they have seen fundamentally a growth in terms of, the applications of their end products. And therefore, because our products are actually just building blocks, the raw materials which go into what, is manufactured and used by them. So one direct is clearly usage in cleaning wipes and things like that, which, as you know, because of COVID, there has been an increase, clearly on that front.
Okay. And this traction is visible both in domestic and export market.
So there has been a traction in both domestic and export. Our white oil business is largely export or overseas focused.
Okay.
So we've clearly seen benefits, that have come in from that side.
Sure. Thanks. In the transformer oil, we have been cautious and our volume is down, but I believe market would have been steadily growing. So are we consciously letting market share go in this segment?
So the market has actually declined in India, especially, and it declined pretty sharply in FY21. Primarily because the budgets that the utilities would have had in ordering new transformers has reduced. So as a consequence, it's not just us, but every transformer manufacturer has faced this problem. We have cautiously reduced further exposure to smaller transformer players. As you know, what's happening because of COVID today is that, size does matter. And, some of the smaller companies are finding it more difficult, to survive in this environment. So as a consequence, we have become significantly more cautious. and we'd rather err on the side of not supplying than getting stuck and getting into a bad debt situation. So we've actually improved our collections during this last 1 year period. So there are two effects which have happened on the domestic transformer side. One is the demand itself has been a bit slow, has been lower, and secondly, we have been a little bit more cautious. But at the upper end of the spectrum, which is the big power transformer guys, we've not really lost any business there. So it's only been on the distribution side with the various small companies that have been involved.
Sure. Thank you. And a small question on conductors. What is the time frame between a tender and a material procurement in conductors?
It varies, but some of the what we call TBCB, tariff-based competitive bidding, typically it takes about 6 months.
Okay. And so there's no way for us to string this timeline. It will be always a 6-month gap between the tendering, we being selected as a bidder and we procuring the material, is it?
No, actually there are a couple of levels of bidding. So the first level is at the boot level, that is the operator level. So once they get the business, then they will give it to an EPC company, and then the EPC company will buy the conductors. So initially the EPC company, once they get the business, after the boot party has won its business, that takes about a few months, and then the EPC company will first do the civil work and put up the towers, and then they will call for the conductors.
Okay.
It starts after 6 months, and then usually the supply is spread over a period of six months to a year, depending on how fast the EPC contractor wants to, or the developer has given time for developing the line.
So, and my last question is, we have strong cash flows, strong operating cash flows in FY21. Now going ahead, what is the outlook on cash flows? This is at operating level.
So we would see cash flows only increasing as we go forward, because you've had one business that has delivered good numbers. I guess next year the numbers may be slightly lower for that, but for the other two divisions, the cable, as I said, will kick in sooner, and then followed by that conductors. We also had in the early part of the year a lot of delays in terms of collections and payments because of COVID related problems, which in the second half of the year, a lot of that has been also cleaned up. So I don't think that's going to just quickly repeat itself, in FY22. So the cash flow side, we are quite confident that cash flow will be good.
All right. Thank you so much for the answers.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nitin Dharmawat from Arun Capital. Please go ahead. Mr. Nitin Dharmawat, your line is in talk mode. Please go ahead with your question, please.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to know the impact that you see because of the ongoing, commodity prices, especially of aluminum and copper, that we could see in the current quarter. So, what is the trajectory that you see going forward in next quarters?
So actually, the impact that has come from aluminum and copper has been actually very minimal. The impact that has come in and hit us has come and hit in the cable business on account of polymer and steel, and and a little bit in terms of international freight. But in the conductor business, the biggest impact has come because of international freight followed by steel. And then the whatever has been seen on aluminum is actually on account of the premium to LME. So the way you would hedge is that you would take a position on London Metal Exchange and freeze the price of the aluminum. But there is no way of hedging the premium, and this premium essentially covers warehousing and logistics costs. So because of the increase in international freight, the premium also has increased from about $80 odd to about $145 to $150 as we speak today. So the impact has come because of that, not because of the aluminum and copper prices moving much.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Pawan Nahar, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kushal Bhai, for your comments. In fact, I just want to say first thing, APAR as a company, you continue to surprise positively in terms of opportunities and new initiatives. So today you spoke about the US opportunity. So my questions first are, if you can talk a little bit about the volume growth that is expected in the oil business, conductor business.
Okay, so in the oil business, the first and the largest product line we have is transformer oil. So we would see in FY 22-23 that there will be a substantial growth in transformer oil simply because FY 20 was a very depressed number. So, as normal spending, starts coming into the utilities, and there is a major focus on the distribution side. There is the Electricity Act has already been modified, and the government they've been very successful with the experiment of privatizing distribution. So there are several circles which have been picked up, and wherever those circles have run today, the private players have actually turned it around to make it profitable.
So Kushal Bhai, anyways, we are a global company. So my question is, last year, including the lubricants, we did about 4 lakh kiloliters.
Yes.
Right? So my question would be like, what is the kind of volume growth? And please assume that, life normalizes. I understand COVID can play a role. So what would be the volume growth you would think is possible in FY 22-23?
So, if you see an overall volume growth, it will be somewhere in the range of 4 to 5%. But within that, you see transformer oil, we see that there will be a growth domestically as well as the overseas growth will continue to be, in the 5-6% range, which it has been steadily growing at. The pack for us is the white oil business, because there, if the profitability is adequate, we increase the business. If the profitability is not adequate, we shrink the business.
Sure.
As far as the industrial and automotive is concerned, we are seeing double-digit growth. We will see a lot of capex going in on the industrial machinery side. And I think many of you would know better than me, given the number of companies that are being tracked, that I think capex over the next 2 years from a private spending standpoint may probably be at its peak. So the moment you put machinery in there, lubricant goes in. We see good growth on the industrial side. And as far as automotive is concerned, we have been growing both our retail franchise as well as, adding more and more OEMs. And within those OEMs, increasing share of business. So double-digit growth on the lubricant side is very much on the cards. I see transformer oil over the next 2 years growing by 7 to 10%, just given the low base effect that's been in place. And as far as white oil is concerned, it's, just depends on the competitive environment.
Okay. So basically today, in terms of EBITDA, oil is our biggest segment and the outlook here remains positive, right?
So the largest segment for us is transformer oil, in which we are bullish going forward. And the most premium segment that we want to grow is the auto and industrial side, which also remains fairly bullish.
Sure. Because I'm looking at it total and you have broken it up, so thank you. Right. The second question I have is, you said that the new capex that we've done on the cable side.
I just wanted to come back to your question on the conductor side. So on the conductor side also, we have a similar strategy in place, where we are focused on growing our OPGW business, growing our HTLS business, growing our copper transpose conductor business, and growing the HTLS services side, which is the whole reconductoring thing. As far as the conventional conductors is concerned, we would only look at, what profitability exists on that. If the profitability doesn't exist, we'll just allow the volume to drop.
Sure.
So ultimately, we want to get to 12,000 rupees per metric ton as a value addition. The copper conductor business actually will continue, as long as electrification is going on. Post that, some of the infrastructure can be used, of course, on the CTC side, which is a copper transposed conductor, as that business grows.
So this year, this year we did 128,000 tons, last year 158 probably, and prior to that 180. And I understand that we are shedding some businesses, given that we have an aspiration of 20% ROE. So, in fact, I will come to that later. So, what is the kind of volume growth we should assume in this business? 12,000 is the aspirational EBITDA per ton, right?
Yes. So, this year we may not expect any volume growth in this year, simply because we are being very careful in terms of what we quote on the conventional conductor side. If there isn't enough base margin, we just don't want to take the order, because there are enough uncertainties that are there on account of freight and steel and these sort of things, which impact it. So we will take a more aggressive stand only once the pitch is a bit clearer. Sure. In the meantime, we continue to go after all these other high value and more premium products. So we don't want to be held with I'd hesitate to give a number in terms of how much per ton, how many tons of business we will do in this year, because we want to keep our strategy a little bit fluid on the conventional conductor side.
So can I then just turn the question, like this year we've done an absolute EBITDA of 100 crores, right? Prior to that, we've done 165, 170. Now, I understand this year may be tough too because of whatever has happened. Next year, right, we would be, whatever combination we do, we'd be looking to have absolute terms a higher EBITDA, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll get a higher EBITDA also.
Any sense on that as FY23? Let's assume life normalizes.
The volume can be anywhere between 100,000 tons and 125,000 tons. But the target is to do that with a 12,500 rupees per ton EBITDA as one runs through the year.
Okay. So in that case, the absolute EBITDA will be more like 125 crores or something like that.
Yes, between 125 and go to 165.
165. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, and this year we've done an absolute EBITDA of 280 crores in the oil business. Some part of it may be some, gain. But and given that, there are so many segments, if I were to just simplify it as an outsider, absolute EBITDA growth in the entire oil business, what is the number we should assume? And again, please assume life normalizes. We understand that COVID, everything else.
We are looking at our plan has about 5,000 odd rupees per KL as the EBITDA per KL, and we are looking at a total volume which is in excess of 400,000 KL. So we would target an EBITDA, to be in the 200 plus crore range for the business.
Okay, and got it. Okay. Then
and this is assuming that there is anyway going to be no tailwind. In fact, there could be a bit of a headwind as some of the base oil prices and all these things normalize. So considering all that, I think we are still targeting something in that range.
Got it. So the third thing was on the cable business, where you mentioned that, the capex we are doing can add about 500 crores revenue. And I'm assuming you are taking a base of FY20, not FY21, right? So more like 2,100 crores kind of revenue, not more.
The FY20 itself was, 200 and odd crores lower than what was done in FY20.
Correct, 1,700 crores.
Yeah. So I am talking about this is incremental sales that can come out of these assets itself.
Sure. So what is the, again, if not FY22, if FY23, absolute number we can assume for sales? You've already guided 10 to 12% margin, which is consistent. So just trying to understand again the scope of the business here.
So the cable business can go up to, with all the, if the whole complex runs well, including these expansions which go in, you would have a revenue that can come in excess of 2,500 crores, 2,500 to 3,000, depending on the copper aluminum mix.
Got it. And essentially, so FY23, easily, if we get somewhere close to that 20%, 18-20% mark, we are talking about more like 250 crores, actually close to 300 crores of net profit. Because today our net worth is 1,400 crores as on March 21.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts, Pawan, in this, so
Sure. Kushal, I understand that there are moving parts, right? And I understand that, like the biggest...
I just like to limit it to this, that, the oil business, the EBITDA will likely fall. Our target is to do 5,000 rupees per KL. We should be able to do more than 400,000 KL, so you have about 200 crores of EBITDA coming from there. The aspiration on the conductor side is to look between 100,000 and 120,000 tons with a 12,000 plus EBITDA per ton. And on the cable business is to try to move back to an EBITDA percentage which is 10% plus. And then, of course, we've got all these new verticals coming up and these expansions happening. The turnover of this can go beyond 2,500 crores, with all the capex and everything. It's between 2,500 and 3,000.
Great. And the biggest takeaway today for me is that you've used the word once in a lifetime opportunity for exports to the USA, right? And the second one was obviously, which you have mentioned earlier, our aspirational ROE number. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Saurabh Patwa from HDFC. Please go ahead.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for taking my question again, sir. Just one number which I missed was acceptances. What was the acceptances number, sir, for the end of the year, sir?
Acceptances, the LIBOR based is 1,034 crores.
Yeah.
And the attracting local rate of interest is 566 crores. 566.
Okay, so this has increased Q on Q, right? So I think because at the March...
Metal prices have increased, no?
Okay. So now they're back to actually 2020, March 20 level.
All the commodity prices have increased, actually,
Okay.
Correct? Across it.
Yeah. Okay, sir. The second question, sir, in this conductor business also, historically, we've been doing much larger volumes. Any specific reason? So 2022, this number of 1,25,000 tons, or is it something there is, or you are excluding some different kind of conductors from this?
No, actually, what we have been systematically doing is changing the product mix. We made investments to debottleneck or to increase capacities in some of the more value-added products. So while we may have a higher capacity, but in terms of looking at the practical pricing that is going on, in the conventional conductors, we may, as mentioned earlier, voluntarily kind of go slow on those, less profitable products and put our entire energies in trying to increase the more value-added component of the business. So,
but this will be only for 2022, right? Because or is this something which believes so basically it's
in terms of strategy for that business, right? We don't want to go after volume anymore at all.
Okay.
If the conventional conductor business doesn't make sense, we will drop it. It's as simple as that. I don't think that will happen, but I'm talking more from the domestic side. The overseas side continues to remain. So there are certain minimum benchmarks which we would like to make sure that the business hits. In the meantime, all these other verticals are all growing. HTLS will grow this year. OPGW will grow because of the favorable tender situation. CTC will grow as we get more and more transformer companies approving our products and utilities. So, and then the HTLS services side also is growing. So these are far more value added, and that's where we want to focus on. The conventional conductor business is like a little bit like a white oil business in oil. You can increase it up and down depending on what the netbacks are.
So to put it differently, so we'll target 1,20,000 tons at EBITDA per ton of 12,500. And if after that, if there is any capacity left, or is you may focus that could be only incremental. So basically, compared to the past, your volumes come down, but your EBITDA target from 10,000 average, which we used to do historically, will move up to 12,000. Is this a fair understanding?
Yes, but one thing that you probably may need to factor in is that the value of the goods per ton will be higher.
Okay.
Each of these products per ton is far higher than, sales value that it will carry relative to a conventional conductor value.
Fair enough, sir. But so if we want, but the EBITDA would be EBITDA range you have already given, so your profitability will be
So
a
it's
factor
on a
of
per ton
10
basis.
basis. Understood, sir. Thanks, sir, and all the best.
Thank you. As there are no further questions, I now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for your time. As I had mentioned in my concluding comments of my opening remarks, that times are a bit uncertain and difficult, but just as the second wave is coming to a close, we see there are wonderful opportunities that are available. As I mentioned specifically on the cable side with respect to the whole ESG play plus the US market for cables. In the oil side, growing strength and presence out of our overseas manufacturing facility covering the GCC and these geographies, plus the increase that we see on the lubricant side. And in our conductor business, primarily around HTLS, OPGW, and the more premium products. One thing seems quite clear that electrical infrastructure is likely to increase worldwide, given the way the whole world is moving right from mobility, which is going to be EV driven or even hybrid driven, which requires power, to penetration of deeper networks for both transmission and distribution. So, we still remain cautiously optimistic, as we move through the next few months and into the next few years. So, thank you once again for your time, and wish that you remain healthy and safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of APAR Industries, that concludes this conference. We thank you all for joining us, and you may now disconnect your line.